Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, I'm having trouble early in the morning getting my tongue to work here. But I am Don Davis, and I'm a digital marketer in our space. Before we get started with Bill Enright this morning, I wanted to just share a message from our sponsor.
This episode of Life Science Success is brought to you by D3 Digital Media Marketing. Dive into the digital world with confidence and creativity on your side. D3 Digital Media Marketing is your all-in-one solution for making a lasting impact online. From the vibrant, engaging world of social media marketing, podcasts, and webinars, to the strategic depths of website development, SEO, pay-per-click, email, and content marketing, we tailor our approach to fit your unique brand story. Let's elevate your presence, connect with your audience, and drive success together. Your digital journey starts here. Visit d3digitalmedia.com to learn more.
And so with that, in this episode of Life Science Success, my guest is Bill Enright. He's a seasoned biotech executive with more than 30 years of experience in building and financing both privately held and publicly held companies. So with that, welcome, Bill.
Thanks very much, Don. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And so just to get us kicked off, would you mind sharing a little bit of your backstory in terms of, who are you and then what led you to life sciences?
Yeah, so I laughed when you said seasoned executive. That just means I have a lot of gray hair. So,
Tell me about it.
Yeah, next month it'll be 35 years in the biotech space. I've been the CEO of Barinthus Bio for almost 5 years now. So August it'll be 5 years for that as well. Before that, CEO of a company called Altimmune, which I helped to get public in 2017. It was a spin out from the University of Alabama at Birmingham initially. And then prior to that, I was head of business development for a company called Genvec, which is now part of the Precigen organization, and was there for about 7 years almost, I think. And prior to that, I was with a company called Life Technologies, which is now part of the Thermo Fisher organization. And there had much more operational roles. So led a research team, led a manufacturing team, ultimately in the marketing organization for that company. So it's been a very interesting career. I tell people I've never had a job that I've done before. So.
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing either. In terms of your, what got you into life sciences? What made you interested in being in the space? It's not an easy place to be, and it's certainly not an easy place to sort of transition companies, I would say, and either, bring them public or sell off the asset either. And so just interested in that story as well.
Yeah. So, I started out as a pre-med major, and mostly because my mom wanted me to be a doctor, but realized that I actually liked drinking beer more than I liked studying for organic chemistry, and decided that the medical school wasn't in my future. So I went into the lab and started working in a lab as an undergraduate, and really fell in love with the science, and then. I moved on to the industry side, and after doing a master's, so I was actually in a PhD program, and took my master's instead because I kind of got tired of being a poor grad student, and then went to work in a lab in life tech, and I had the luxury of getting involved at Life Tech. They had these spin-out companies that were kind of companies within the company, and they would put marketing, manufacturing, research, everything in kind of a wing of a building, and you had a startup within this larger organization. And I was lucky enough to get involved in that, and realized that I really like the business side of science. And so I went back to Johns Hopkins and did my business degree there, and at the Carey School, and really haven't looked back from that. So Life Tech gave me an opportunity to jump over to the business side of things. I started out as a business analyst in the marketing side of the organization, and then they got bought, and I didn't want to move out to California for a number of reasons, and so I tried to figure out what was next, and ended up with Genbec in the business development group. So yeah, it's kind of a path that you wouldn't normally project to people, but it's been a lot of fun and a lot of interesting things along the way.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me to hear, kind of the story and the twist that people take. I mean, oftentimes we'd love to say that there was a set path and a trajectory that we, really wanted to follow, and then, everything just worked out. But the reality is that's not how life normally happens. I mean, normally there are twists and turns. Sometimes, they're not things that you wanted to have happen, and then on the other side there are, definite benefits as well. In terms of your roles and your experience, which ones do you think, were really pivotal in shaping your career?
Yeah, so obviously the time at Life Tech was pretty interesting because I got to do a lot of different things in different parts of the organization. So it gave me a pretty broad background across the industry experience in developing products in the manufacturing side, the research side, and also in the marketing side. So that was really kind of key. But I think um, the time at Genbec also was pretty key for me because even though it was a business development role, again, it's working with smaller companies. You get an opportunities to do lots of different things. So I was technically in business development, and uh, I did a lot of stuff, writing contracts and reviewing legal documents and intellectual property stuff and deals. And then I led a clinical team for a while because I had done a deal that resulted in a strategic collaboration. So I ended up running the joint collaboration team. Did alliance management, and so just offered you the opportunity to learn different aspects of a company and what needs to get done in order to make things tick.
I think it's very important to have that broad level of experience, and then, I would imagine that there are certain things as well. Now, leading companies and being a board member, that probably play, directly into that as well. Can you describe any of those experiences that have really, helped you, with your approach in terms of business?
Yeah, I was very fortunate when I was at Genvec. I got a call one day from a guy, a cold call, and I answered the phone, and he said, "Look, I want to don't hang up on me, but I want to talk to you about running my company." And it was the current CEO of what is now Altimmune, or the former CEO of what is now Altimmune, and he said, "Look, I'm 70 years old, and I'm not ready to retire yet, but I'm looking to scale it back a little bit." And so I got a unique opportunity to join that company. And still have the former CEO there. So first time CEO, he stepped back into a different role as the COO, and so he was still there for me to ask questions and bounce things off of, and really was extremely helpful in getting my feet on the ground as far as that leadership role was concerned. Now, the timing of that wasn't extremely good because that was in June of 2008. So my first non-deal roadshow, where literally I was in New York when Lehman Brothers came down, and the crash happened and everything. So that was not a fun part of the experience, but it does show you that you need to be resilient, and that's one of the things I tell people. Talking about career things, right? Uh, don't be afraid to take risks.
Mm.
and follow your gut on things, and sometimes you need to be really resilient. So in those early days, I took a risk as a first time CEO with a company that didn't have a huge amount in the bank. Thought I could come in and help them raise money, and then the financial crisis happened. So what ended up happening? I went a year without salary. I took a second mortgage on my house in order to provide a loan to the company so that we could make payroll, and because I believed in the science, and ultimately it all worked out, and we were able to move things forward and advance the company, and when I transitioned out of there, they actually transitioned to a whole new technology, and the company's still going strong.
It's an amazing story though, because I feel like the 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 way that so many companies are looking at today, right? I mean, it's not easy to get financing in most life sciences companies today, and there are probably a lot of companies that are sort of facing similar things. Like, look, I mean, we could try and tough it out. We might be able to get personal loans and other things to sort of extend things, but the reality is that it will have to be a different world on the other side, or the CEOs probably stand to lose an awful lot as well. So I mean, I feel like this time is somewhat unprecedented from the standpoint of just so many companies currently looking and just struggling to find that initial investment, or even longer term investments. And it's not an easy time in life sciences again.
No, no, exactly. Again, one of the benefits of having this much gray hair is I've gone through this a couple of times, and so you know how to weather the storm, and what you need to do to get through it. I laugh. I tell you one more story about the Altimmune days. So um, we were nearing the end of our rope, and we had interest from a publicly listed company in acquiring us, and they knew we were near the end of our rope, and so that wasn't a very good deal. And so I had a board meeting. It was a Friday afternoon in the April timeframe, and said, look, there's a sunset clause on this offer. We need to make a decision. We're either going to take this offer, or we're going to have to close the doors. And the board said, well, reluctantly, we're going to take the offer. And I closed the board meeting and was checking my emails, and I had an email from BARDA, which is one of the government agencies that fund defense work and things, and we had won a $40 million contract.
Oh, wow.
Uh, so I called the board back that Friday afternoon and said, I've got new information. And I said, we won't start getting money from this contract until September. I'm not sure how we're going to get from April to September, but, and they said, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. Tell the company to go pound sand. And so, that's what I did, and the BARDA contract led to some VC interest, and we got some significant funding, and eventually was able to get that company public.
Yeah, amazing. Again, another amazing sort of twist, right? I mean, if that email would have come in 24 hours later, the decision could have
Exactly.
already been made and in progress, right? And it'd be a tougher place maybe to have been. Not to say that you couldn't. Most likely, nothing would have been signed anywhere. So luckily, you probably could have called stuff back from emails and other things and said, "Hey, look, we've had a change in heart," but at the same time, not an easy place to be. Um,
No, no kidding. Yep. So yeah, it's been interesting.
yeah, I had said, sort of to you whenever we first, started talking, that the AI space to me is exciting, and your board position at Bullfrog. Could you tell everybody a little bit about Bullfrog AI, and what does your board position entail?
Yeah, so Bullfrog is a really interesting small AI company. So it's a virtual company. They licensed a really unique algorithm out of the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and that gives them the ability to take a lot of disparate data and draw conclusions and things. And so we're using that to we have got a really interesting collaboration with the Lieber Brain Institute. So they have the largest brain database in the world, and so we're working with them and analyzing a lot of the data that's available there, trying to validate new targets in the CNS space.
Very
So
nice.
I'm a board member. I'm also the chair of the compensation committee there.
I would imagine, though, I mean, as a board member, it probably is yet another shift, right? So, I mean, you go from, I don't know, very tactical roles to much more strategic roles in business development and alliance management and things like that, to even more strategic roles, now as CEO. How do you find the shift again to board member now? Because, I mean, I would imagine that your perspective is probably helping off a lot, but again, you're one. I feel like each one of these positions, you have to sort of go from sort of doing to guiding to, sitting in the back and sort of listening and trying to contribute, but at the same time, not trying to do other people's job for you. And then eventually these board seats, it's a totally different shift yet again. So I'd love to hear, about, how have you found that sort of journey?
Yeah, it's been a constant learning, to be honest. And I was a pretty hands-on kind of person, and early in my career, delegation was really difficult, and that's one of the things that I've had to learn over the years is how to appropriately delegate. And I think um, as you continue to advance, and as you said, to get to the CEO, it's not just delegation, it's actually empowering the folks that are underneath you, and making sure, I tell people, for my teams, I always try and hire people way smarter in what they do than I ever could be, and make sure that they have what they need to get the job done. So both from a human capital and a financial capital to get what they need done, and make sure we've got clear goals, and give them enough rope to hang themselves, really, so they can get their job done. But make sure we're clear on what the goals are and whether they're meeting them or not.
Very interesting. So let's talk about Barinthus Bio. What's the company's mission, and what specific projects are you excited about right now?
Yeah, so our mission really is to advance the next generation of precision immunotherapies that lead T cells to gain control over disease and improve patients' lives. I mean, that's a mouthful, but what we're really doing is we've got technologies that help rebalance the immune system. So in chronic infectious diseases like hepatitis B, where is one of our focus areas, there your immune system is no longer able to fight off the hepatitis B virus. And so what we need to do is kind of rebalance that. And in this case, increase and stimulate the CD8 positive T cells, which are the arm of the immune system that actually fights off those kind of infections. In order to rebalance the immune system, in other areas like a celiac program, which is an immune tolerance, you kind of got the flip side. You've got the immune system where it's actually attacking healthy cells. And so you need to dampen that immune system. And so we've got a different platform that we're utilizing that helps allow us to do that, to change the ratio of Tregs to T effector cells. So you're reducing the pro-inflammatory response that's typically seen in these immune tolerance diseases. So it's really the benefit here, and what really drives me and drives us as a company is being able to impact patients' lives.
Very good. So, in your role, what are some of the innovative strategies or projects that are currently underway at Barinthus?
Yeah, so one of the key things to me is corporate culture. I think you hear a lot more about that. Lately, you didn't used to hear anything about that, but for a long time, I think those companies that had unique corporate cultures were those that were really innovative and driving in whatever field they're in. You look at Apple and Microsoft or IBM. They had their unique cultures, and everybody was aware of what the culture was. Everybody knew what the vision and the mission of the company was, and so we spend a lot of time on what are our strategic pillars, making sure that our core values line up under those strategic pillars, and that that we're it's all part of our interview process, our performance review process. Everything is trying to make sure that we're all in sync as far as what that corporate culture looks like.
Yeah, it's an interesting um, sort of time in any company. I feel like because um, there's one particular company that I helped here in Colorado um, grow from about 20 people to about 250 people. And I remember as we were interviewing right around 100, the 100-person sort of mile mark, there's somebody that was with the company whenever they were 5 people. And
Yep.
we were in the room sort of interviewing one particular candidate and talking about corporate culture with during the interview. And the one person that had been with the company the longest, he just said, I've sort of wondered, along the way, whether or not if we're losing our way. But he said, in hearing a lot of the conversation, he walked out of there, knowing that again, that the culture that they'd originally started with was still, a part of the company, which was important to this one individual. I don't know at all levels in the organization that it was, but I do think that as you grow, I mean, it becomes more and more important that, people kind of understand this is who we are. And this is, kind of the foundation of the way the company thinks.
No, I agree, and it's funny you mentioned the 100-person mark, because I think that's kind of a key metric. You really have a change, right? So I joined Barinthus. I think I was employee number 36,
Mm.
and we quickly grew, and now we're at about 130. But there's kind of these transition points where, when I was hired, every Monday morning we had a half-hour meeting, and who's going to be in the office, who's going to be out of the office, what experiments were being done, and it was real easy to have everybody in the room. And you get to 60, 70 people, that gets more difficult, and the meeting structure changes, and you don't need to know everybody when somebody's not going to be in the office or out of the office or whatever. And and then around that 100 mark, 100 people, it changes again, and then you start relying on the next level of leadership to still convey the same messages, and make sure that the culture is actually continuing to flow down. And you've really kind of rely on the next level, because you just you can't be there for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and then decision criteria becomes more important. I kind of smiled with the idea of having like a morning meeting, because as we grew, one of the things that I had said was, I was like, look, project teams, I don't want to have like an in-depth project meeting where we're sitting there for hours and hours trying to examine everything that everybody's going to do in the day. It's a waste of everybody's time. Your time is much more valuable in the lab. So let's just have a 15-minute stand up. And I'll tell you, the first few were really rough. I mean, we really struggled initially, but then it was kind of funny because it became the way that teams worked, right? So it was like, look, the 15-minute stand up was the real way that teams kind of came together and sort of sorted out the real details. And then other people have since moved on to companies, and I think it's funny because they've reached back out. That they say to me, hey, look, we reinstituted these, in the new company that we're in, because we saw what had happened. And And I feel like that's the way that should happen. I mean, we all learn and sort of experience things in different ways, and the things that we bring back to a company as well are important. And it becomes even more important whenever you get to that 100, people and upward sort of level. So yeah, really important.
Yeah, I think over the last year, the phrase of the day has been formalizing the informal, right? So making sure that you're passing it down to the next level. So it's not always glamorous, right? You've got more SOPs and more guidelines but you have to make sure that everybody's working off the same sheet of music, and that's much easier to do when you're smaller and you can have verbal conversations, but at some point, that it's like the whisper game, right? It gets changed every time it gets told to somebody, so it needs to be written down.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of your career and all of the history that you have, what's the greatest piece of leadership advice that you've ever had?
Ooh, that's a great question. Um, so I laugh and go back to one of my very first jobs. I was a porter in a hospital, so
Mm,
delivering food up to the rooms and things like that. And my boss at the time told me, he said, no matter what role you're in, um, carry a clipboard, walk quickly like you know what you're doing, and you'll get in anywhere. And it doesn't directly translate anymore because no one carries around a clipboard these days. But the premise is, you know, especially in leadership positions, if you act confidently and you um, act with urgency, you, you can really make things happen.
mm-hmm.
And so it's not a clipboard anymore, but I still think the premise of that saying still holds true.
Yeah, I mean, I might shift it just a little slightly as well, and would love to hear your feedback in terms of my replay of this. So, I oftentimes get asked, so to grow an organization exponentially, what are the biggest things that I've sort of learned in terms of growing organizations? And the two differentiating factors I feel like tie to exactly what you just said. Number one being focus and sort of knowing where you're going, and knowing where you're going down to a very sort of poignant level, right? Not like, not a broad brush, not, hey, look, we're gonna hit this revenue target, but no, specifically what is going to happen in the future, and what does that future look like, and how do you focus on just that one thing, and whatever that one thing is. It can't be 10, it can't be 5, it needs to be one. So what is the one thing? And then the second one is intensity. So this whole idea of not having a tolerance for inaction, and making sure that everybody understands, hey, look, we are moving today, and we're all going to go get stuff done. And it's really clear whenever you're sort of like, I'll just take like manufacturing roles, or lab production roles, right? It's very clear, whenever you're doing that. Why can't it be clear in contracting? Why can't it be clear in business development, in alliance management, in project management, etc.? And to a point that people just are sort of driving to that that one goal. And so whether it's to your point, carrying a clipboard and individually taking on that focus and intensity, or in teams and organizations. So is that an
No,
accurate replay?
I absolutely. I think that's absolutely an accurate replay, and I also think one of the other things that I've had to learn over time is showing some vulnerability as a
Mm,
leader, uh, and you get much more from your folks when they realize that you're also human, and know that you're human. So I think that's also been key, and that's something that I certainly didn't have when I first started out. It was more of a you know, you're a professional, you're going to do your job, and you don't
Hmm.
need, I don't need to know your kids' names. You don't need to know what my kids' names are, or that, that kind of stuff. And, uh, you know, admitting to making a mistake, that the boss never makes a mistake, right? No, that's not how it goes.
Right. Yeah.
We're all susceptible.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, some of us have made more mistakes than others. Just pointing at myself there.
No,
So,
I have my share.
yeah. So, Bill, what inspires you?
uh, Really, the ability to help patients. That's the driving force. You know, Barinthus, we under a different name at that time, but we were lucky to be involved in the COVID-19 experience, and so we were early inventors and did co-development with the University of Oxford of the vaccine that was ultimately sold by AstraZeneca around the world. And being involved in a program like that, where epidemiologists estimate that in the first year of distribution we saved more than 6 million lives. That's huge. And I mean, I literally still get goosebumps when I talk about it, because it's just and it's an amazing thing to be a part of.
Thank you for sharing that. What concerns you?
Money, always, as a biotech company, that we've got some amazing technologies, amazing products in development, and making sure that we're able to continue to get funded to move those things forward. Like you said, the urgency is, and intensity is clearly times money, and especially for small companies.
Yeah. Yeah. Also true. What excites you?
Science. I think there's some amazing things being done, not just at Barinthus, but I just think, we're making leaps and bounds as to what we're able to do, in oncology and in CNS and Alzheimer's. There's just a lot of real cool stuff going on that, it doesn't mean that it's going to be cured tomorrow, but we're just making significant advances across the board, and I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I think about the future. I mean, whenever we have, AI helping us, not hallucinating a lot, with AI, and yet, sort of getting to the right answers maybe quicker, using and leveraging large language models, to help everybody in all sorts of aspects of, companies and corporate life, but also, especially in science. It seems to me like, there's just some really brilliant things happening there. The the progress of CRISPR and what we're doing with, gene editing, and sort of where things might go from here. I mean, and to know that, we are a slow moving industry, and so even though it's exciting, we sort of, you'll see the sort of this tidal wave, and then in some cases I remember very specific things where you don't hear a lot, but there are definitely people working on things, and then all of a sudden one day you start to hear, oh, hey, here's this new therapy. And oh, by the way, there are 10, 20, 30 other companies that are working on the same thing. And so, definitely an exciting time for science, I feel like, given all the things that are going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember back, monoclonals, that was
That
the
was
next
it.
biggest thing, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and the first few iterations didn't work, and then they had to humanize them, and they had to do this and that, and now monoclonals are pretty standard therapies.
Right.
Gene therapy, similar thing. mRNA, similar thing. So these things that, you go out the first time, and you need to tweak things, and hey, that's what's exciting about science, right? It's continuing to solve the problems.
Absolutely. Well, Bill Enright, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success podcast and for sharing with us what you're working on at Barinthus Biotherapies and Biotherapeutics, and all the work that you're doing across the industry as well. with Bullfrog AI, et cetera. And so, yeah, it was great to have this conversation. I really appreciate you being on.
I appreciate it as well, Don. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.